Raising children became cheaper because of the industrialized production of goods in order to live, required to live. Things like refrigeration, laundry, food production, food storage, as in refrigeration and processing. Everything was becoming cheaper as prostitutes became less available, and the push for men to marry in order to get the attention they want from women, and the idea that every man should have his own children. So when you go back through your genealogy and look, you'll see that prior to the 19th century, or I'm sorry, the 1900s, back into the 19th century and beyond and below, families were much larger, much larger. Today we have 1, 2, or 3 children if you get married. 50 years ago they had 4, 5, or 6. 100 years ago they had as many as they could. every time. My great ancestor, John, who migrated out here from Ohio originally, he had $5,000 in cash in the 1800s. That's what he brought out here. $5,000 in cash. It's a lot of money. He was a wealthy man. He had close to, with his 2 wives, and he wasn't a Mormon. His first wife passed away. He had approximately 15 children. Okay, that's a lot of kids. So when you were wealthy and you could afford a wife, you would have all the children you could. All of us other men, let's just say the ones that don't have a lot of wealth, right? We're like, I can't afford it, but I can afford a piece of ass, once a month down at the whorehouse. That's how you took care of your man needs. There was no need. There was no requirement. Today we see, as a matter of social conditioning, this drive, this continuing drive for every man to find a woman and pick her up and marry her and have a kid or 2 with her. And it is an attempt to control man. That is the sex of men, to control men as a species. They know, the social engineers, I'm going to go back to this again, that have been around since the early 1800s, that wanted to take control of society in a covert manner, knew that they had to have a woman in every man's house in order to control them. It was a huge part of the control mechanism, because free men that kept their money, that did what they wanted with it, that chose whether or not they wanted a wife, they knew that those men weren't controllable and they needed to get control of them. And so they did. They got rid of prostitution and the Industrial Revolution, right? The industrial expansion of our nation in technology and the standard of living raising made it easier for them to say, prostitutes down, standard of living up, you have to get married. Men began to be shamed. And then every woman believed that she could be had as a wife, that she was qualified, that she was good enough, when in fact they aren't. They never have been. Okay, that was the trick. And so every woman held her vagina out there and said, I'm worthy of marriage. You can't have it until you marry me. And that was the transition from prostitution up here and wives, just a few down here, this way, to where prostitution became illegal and every woman held themselves out as wives when they were not qualified. There's a lot of you Mgtow guys that are philosophical, that have your own opinions, your own beliefs, and that's great. You may believe that I'm new to this because I'm just now making videos. I have spent years and decades studying this phenomena, and it's not a phenomena. It's actually part of the social engineering program, that they want men controlled. So they knew that as technology advanced, they'd be able to learn about behavior of humans and then bring them under their dominion. They stepped out from the feudal system from the 1700s and back, stepped into the age of freedom or supposed democracy, and then went into covert control of men, knowing that men, if they lived with women and were forced to live with women, that the women would start to beat them down. And you Mgtow, you know this. Because a lot of you say the moment you have any relationship with a woman, the control begins. And unless you're a strong alpha male, you're going to fall under that control. To some degree, whatever it is. To some degree. And it is true. That is what happens. And so they brought 90% of the men who used to be free and forced them into the marriage column and away from prostitutes. Forced them into the marriage column. They are more easily controlled. It's a fact. Because even the good women, even the unicorns will influence their men, their husbands. Not necessarily in a bad way, but they have influence. So let's take a look at the women ratio back in the 1800s and back. You got this huge amount of women, and I'm saying only that 5% was worth marrying, right? Even back then, there were just a few unicorns. So when a man, let's say me, my name is John, I'm the heir to the family, the fortune, right? I'm an alpha male, I'm strong, I'm intelligent, I'm good looking. I'm going to have a wife because it is my job to carry on the family name. It's my job. So I'm going to have to put up with a wife. So I look out at the vast unwashed hordes of fucking women out there and I go, I need to find me a good wife. And in the old days, the dad, the father, the patriarch of the family would set this up. He would go to other families of like status, like religion, it's true, like income, and probably similar line of work, businessman, farmer, whatever. And he would go to those different families and choose a wife for his son. And look for a qualified wife. What was he looking for? Compatibility, controllability, right? You think he's going to find a bitch for his son? Fuck no, he knows better because he is a patriarch with a family and a wife. So he knows that he needs to find not just a beautiful girl, but a good girl that will shut the fuck up. It's the 1800s. That boy who's going to be carrying on the family legacy does not need to go home and get fucking harangued all the time. Okay, they knew better because they were alpha men back then. And it was a whole different culture. So Mgtow today, a lot of the monk types, you are absolutely right. You shouldn't have women. You're not qualified to take care of them. You don't have the same cultural pressure to have a family. You don't feel it incumbent upon you to take care of the legacy of your family. But a lot of males have that drive, so understanding our history, what happened, right? Most men did not need women, but now prostitutes, standard of living, it's gone the other way. They forced it. They forced it on the men of America, and that's why we're where we're at with regard to why can't men just get prostitutes. Today, you guys in Mgtow, and me, I guess, we say in most relationships it's a pump 'em and dump 'em attitude. It's a pump 'em and dump 'em attitude. Because that's the way it used to be. Except men used to have to pay prostitutes to get sex. And women, in order to get money, had to prostitute themselves. Let's see, that's what happened. So women used men for sex. Period. Right? If this is the amount of women, and only this many, down here, 5% were allowed to get married because of economic restrictions. Economic restrictions made them a very small percentage. The rest of them had to do something for a living, didn't they? Housekeepers, either in a hotel or at some rich, wealthy man's house. He could afford 1, 2, 3 housekeepers if he needed them. Working for small businesses, working as seamstresses, doing laundry. There was a lot of laundry to do by hand. The advent of the washing machine got rid of that job. Those women needed to do something else. So as I said, the standard of living and technology went up. The requirement for women to be prostitutes went down because it was made illegal and is culturally frowned upon. Who suffered for this? Men suffered because of the Industrial Revolution. This is just my opinion, but it's based on historical fact. Men suffered. They were forced to take their wealth, and rather than use it as they saw fit, they were forced into a social situation that required them to get married in order to have pussy. And then they were told, well, buy a washing machine for her. Get an electric stove, get an electric water heater. All of the great inventions that made domestic life better benefited women in the early 1900s, all the way till now, but in the early 1900s, made their domestic life easier. And rather than be paid as a prostitute, they were given the awful, oppressive chore of being a housewife. Awful, oppressive chore of being a housewife. What they wanted to be back then. So this mechanism, this program for controlling men coincided with the advent and implementation of more technology. Social restrictions were increased on men. They weren't allowed to fight, have duels. Right? Women were allowed to vote. There's another head scratcher, literally. That's another subject. And so men had their power taken. Men had their freedom taken, right? Prostitution's high, right? Freedom's high. As prostitution went away and men had to buy wives, their freedom went away. They had to spend more of their money to buy those wives, and then buy a house to put them in, and then buy things to satisfy these women who now controlled their men by having the golden rule, right? She who has the golden pussy tries making the rules. And the battle of the sexes was tilted in favor of women. So that is a historical look. That's a look at, and I'm just keeping it simple, but it's history and it is there to be understood. You have to look at the law. You have to look at history. You have to look at social standards. You have to look at facts. You have to look at technology and the way this country is developed and the world is developed in order to understand what happened to the relationships of men and women. Why are we in the boat we're in today, and what can you do about it? Oh, man. What can you really do about it? You can start by taking control of your life. Men going their own way, I'm going to tell you again, is not a term, and its conditions are not set by the most popular mouthpieces. I don't give a fuck what the other Mgtow guys say. Mgtow is men going your own way with regard to the social standard, which is controlled and dictated by feminists who are themselves but puppets of a social engineering program. Learn, live, love it. If you want to have a personal philosophy, I think that is great. You should. You're a man. Be free. Go your own way, whether it is being a monk and never, ever, ever even having to talk to a woman again, right? But it's hard to do that, right? Or whether you're a red pill pump 'em and dump 'em type, or whether you're some kind of purple pill guy. Whatever it is you're doing, or whether you're a fucking blue pill guy, right? And just taking shit off of your feminist bitch left and right. But know the facts. You have to know the facts, and you have to be willing to understand and accept them. My brother looks a lot like me. never got married, has rarely had a girlfriend. He gets